I want to explain to you quickly how to use responsiveness. So obviously with all the different screens that we have people viewing websites on, it's extremely important to take responsiveness into consideration. So the first thing that I want you guys to always consider is when you're creating a website, within your head tags of your HTML, you always want to add a meta name for viewport. So what this does is you're setting the initial scale to 1, and what that tells the browser is that if you're viewing this website on a cellular device, it needs to set the website to scale to the width of the device that it's being viewed on. So it's extremely important to always add this meta name into your website's head HTML. So it goes just like this, simply meta name. You're giving it the name for what it needs to affect. So it's viewport, and for the content, it's width, and the width equals the device width. So that's very important, and we're setting the initial scale to 1. So if you do not add this into your HTML file, then you'll have some responsiveness issues on websites. Next thing I want to go through with you guys is, this is just following on from the grid Holy Grail layout that we did. So this was the result. But now, if we were to scale this down onto mobile, you see that it doesn't look good. So you would still have your nav bar on your left-hand side and your content on the right with your main content in the center, but this just does not look good, and it doesn't follow very good principles for web development. So what we want to do is we want all of these sections to stack on top of one another when we are viewing this website on mobile format. And how we do that is quite simple. We'll go into the style sheet and we'll create a media query. So we'll do @media and screen, and then we'll set a max width of 772 pixels. This is a usual breakpoint for mobile and tablet view. It's media screen, and that's how you would display it. Then you would have your opening curly braces. And what we'll do, since on general, this is how we're displaying the grid. So what we can do is simply to copy this. So we'll copy this code and we shall place it within the media query. Now if we save this and we go back to the site, you'll see that there's been no change, all right? But in order to change this, we can simply change how we've associated for the grid to display. So what we can do here is we want these columns to all stack on each other. So we'll have these rows. So we'll have header, we'll have nav, then we'll have main, then we'll have a side, and then we'll finally have footer. And to do this, you can see that the header is correct. It spans all 3 columns, as we've got here, but it spans the entire top row. So we want to use the same method for the rest of the section. So we'll do nav to span all 3 columns of the second row. For the third row, we'll do main, and main. This will span all 3 columns on the third row, and then we'll do a side, and finally we'll do footer, and so basically what we're doing is we're saying that below 772 pixels, and I know this can sound complicated at times because we're saying max width. So what this is saying is after 772, so from 773 pixels, it'll no longer use this media query. This media query will become inactive. So just wrap your head around this thought process with max width. But what this essentially is saying is once we drop below 773 pixels and we hit 772 all the way down to 0, this media query will start to take place and effect. Now if we go back to the site, we can see that it has indeed taken effect, and once we pass the threshold of 772 pixels, the site goes back into the initial setup for the grid template areas that we've set. But we can see that it's not displaying in a very nice manner. We have the head as 1 fraction, we've got the nav section as 3FR, and what we want to do, we want to make everything assimilate equally, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to set the rows, since we've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 5 rows. So if we want them equal, we'll set 5 fractions all the way down, right? And now you can see that everything is equal except for the footer. So we've got, sorry about that, we've got 5, I've added 4, so we'll do 1 FR. So now we've got all 4 sections accounted for in rows, and if we refresh the page, you can see that everything is equally distributed. Now, what we want is we want our main section to take up the majority of the place, right? So, for example, we can set the third fraction, which means 1, 2, 3. That will affect the main because it's our third in our grid template rows. We've set it as 5 fractions, so that correlates to your main. So if we refresh the page, you can see the main has taken up the majority of the screen, right? And we can actually remove the grid template columns, because we only have 1 column now when we drop below 772 pixels, and that is pretty much it, guys. So that's Media Query. Media Query is a very powerful tool. We can do quite a bit with it. It is extremely important to always consider and take it into mind when you're developing a site from scratch, because people view sites from all sorts of forms, all sorts of devices these days. I believe that the principle was essentially put into effect in 2010-11, when we had tablets and mobile cell phones becoming mainstream. And yeah, so this is basically how you create a website with mobile responsiveness through a media query. So thank you guys, and practice.